Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into Patagonia, a company that somehow built a global brand by asking people to buy less. We're going to break down their pretty radical strategy for scaling change, which starts with an idea inside their own company and ends with transforming an entire industry.
So yeah, it all kicks off with this central puzzle, right? Patagonia literally runs ads telling customers not to buy their jackets, and yet their influence on sustainability is just huge. It's a completely counterintuitive approach, but their impact is undeniable. So how on earth do they pull that off?
Well, the answer isn't just one thing. It's this really deliberate, multi-layered strategy that creates a powerful ripple effect. It all starts with just one decision inside their own company, but it radiates outward and ends up changing a whole ecosystem.
Okay, so the first step in their playbook, it's basically being the stone that gets dropped in the pond. It's all about them proving, first and foremost, that sustainability isn't just some nice, feel-good thing. It's an actual commercially viable business model.
And look, this is not some new trend for them. Just look at this timeline. Way back in 1996, they went all in on organic cotton. Then, 20 years later, they did it again, shifting their entire wetsuit line to a plant-based rubber called Yulex. These weren't just little experiments on the side. No, these were massive, company-wide bets on doing the right thing.
And here's what's so key about their philosophy. By going all in, 100%, they literally take the choice away from you and me, the consumer. You just can't buy a non-organic cotton shirt from them, period. They were totally willing to take a potential hit on sales in the short term just to prove their commitment and, force a conversation across the whole industry. Okay, and here's the kicker. The second they proved that a material like Yulex could actually work, they didn't just hoard it for themselves. Nope. They went straight to their competitors and said, hey, you guys should try this out. See, their goal isn't just to be better. It's to blaze a trail and then leave a map for everyone else to follow.
All right, so that's the first ripple. Let's see how this thing builds. Once they've proven a concept works inside their own company, they start using strategic investments to get innovation going outside their own four walls.
So, how do they do that? Well, they've got their own venture fund called $20 million and change. But hold on, this is not your typical Silicon Valley VC fund just chasing the next big payday. It's operating with a totally different playbook.
You know how traditional VCs are all about one thing, that one bottom line, profit? Well, Patagonia's fund looks at three: people, the planet, and profit. For them, making a positive impact on the environment is every bit as critical as getting a financial return on their investment.
Okay, let's look at a case study here. A startup they invested in called Beyond Surface Technologies, or BST for short. So what BST is trying to do is crack one of the industry's biggest, toughest problems, creating a high-performance water repellent that isn't made from crude oil. It's basically a bet, right? A bet that a small, nimble startup can kickstart a revolution way faster than the giant, slow-moving chemical companies ever could.
And this right here is so important. For them, the ultimate win isn't just getting their money back. It's when their biggest competitors, the big guys, start using the very same innovations that they helped fund. Competitor adoption isn't a threat to them. It's the whole point. That is success. That's how you scale real environmental change.
So, this all brings us to their most radical, most counterintuitive strategy yet. This is what turns those ripples into a full-blown tidal wave. They actively share their best ideas with their direct competitors. Yeah, you heard that right.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? Their model isn't just about being first, it's about being first, proving it works, and then immediately open sourcing it so the whole industry can benefit and amplify the positive impact. It's kind of like a first, then free approach to innovation.
And just to be clear, this is not some new marketing stunt. They've been doing this for decades. Back in the 90s, they were sharing everything they learned about organic cotton. Today, they're doing the exact same thing with their Yulex wetsuit material and their traceable down standard. But let's be real, they're still a business, right? So they do draw a pretty clear line in the sand. They'll give away the stuff that helps the planet, the big environmental platforms, the best practices. But what they keep proprietary, that's the secret sauce, the special tech that gives them a competitive edge, like exactly how they laminate a wetsuit.
And get this, they even use this open approach with chemical companies. The folks who are often painted as the villains in this story. Their whole insight is that real, lasting change only happens when the big brands, the ones with all the buying power, insist on it. So they use that leverage to basically pull new, cleaner chemistry all the way through the supply chain.
Okay, so after all this work, leading by example, investing in startups, sharing their secrets, how do they make sure any of this change actually sticks?
Well, they work to weave these new standards right into the very fabric of the industry itself. They want to make it permanent.
This is really the final and maybe most important step, making the change permanent. And they don't do it alone. They do it by helping start these big, multi-stakeholder coalitions. This basically forces everyone, including their biggest rivals, to sit down at the same table and agree on a new set of rules for the whole game.
Let's take the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, for example. Patagonia was a founding member, and they helped create what's called the HIG Index. It's now this standardized tool that anyone in the industry can use to measure their supply chain sustainability. And they did the same thing with the Fair Labor Association to formalize social responsibility. See the pattern? It's not just about them getting better, it's about building the tools to lift up the entire industry.
So, through all this, after decades of trying, they've learned a pretty tough lesson, and that is that scaling is hard. And not all sustainable ideas are created equal. Some are just way, way harder to scale up than others.
And this really gets to the core of the challenge they found. Things that are based in agriculture, like organic cotton, incredibly difficult to scale. I mean, you're trying to coordinate with thousands of different farms, deal with costs, competition from GMOs. It's a mess. But on the other hand, a centralized innovation, like a new chemical finish from one supplier, or a material like Yulex, that can be scaled across the industry much, much faster, especially if it's cost competitive.
So, where does all this leave us? What we've seen is that Patagonia has basically created this radical open-source playbook for changing an entire industry from the inside out. And it really makes you wonder, right? How much of this playbook, leading by example, investing for impact, sharing your secrets, how much of that could be applied to any business, in any industry, that genuinely wants to make a difference?